guys? We are back. It's Colin Stevens here, and I'm joined by Kotie Kimble of UNC Charlotte men's basketball assistant. And Kotie and I have known each other for a number of years, so it's good to have you on the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Appreciate
man.
it. Appreciate it.
So how about you go ahead and give the audience a little bit about your basketball journey?
Well, Colin, my basketball, as you know, my basketball journey, I think, started at Coastal Carolina back in, 2003. It seems forever ago. I started there as a student assistant. Pete Strickland, who I will forever be grateful for, gave me that opportunity, and I spent 2 years there with him. And then Buzz Peterson came along for my final 2 years, and I always wanted to coach. It was something that was very important to me, and I was always passionate about the game, and never was really a great player. And I remember, working with Buzz, and after one practice, just kind of sitting in his office, and he told me, he said, "Man, if you want to coach, I think that you can be really good at this. As long as you continue to work hard, and keep your nose clean. There's a place, for someone like you." And he said, another thing he said is just that you could really have, an impact, on a lot of young men, because of your journey. So, after that meeting, I always wanted to coach, but after that, I got so excited because to me, this guy Buzz Peterson, who was Michael Jordan's roommate, college roommate, great player at Carolina. He coached at some really big-time places, and the guy that I had so much respect for, gave me the okay, like, hey, man, you can be good at this. And, from there, my passion just went to another level. Like, I got excited, and I continued to pursue. And after college, I graduated, and I coached high school for 1 year in Charlotte, the south side of town, Waxhaw to be exact. Marvin Ridge High School, where I spent a few months. And then I was able to get into college coaching right away. I was very fortunate. Eddie Biedenbaugh, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, gave me my first job at UNC Asheville. And fortunately enough for me, I got in as an assistant coach.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, that's relatively rare because there is no video coordinator, there is no Dobo, director of basketball operations, time spent for Kotie. So him jumping right into the assistant spot is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it was great. And Coach B, man, I've had the opportunities just to work for great people. And Eddie gave me my first opportunity. He was terrific. He's in the Hall of Fame at Asheville. He's in the Hall of Fame at several other places. And I just felt very fortunate. So I spent 3 years at Asheville. And again, I worked with great people alongside Nick McDevitt, who's now the head coach at Middle Tennessee. He's a good friend of mine. Brett Carey was there at the time as an assistant. So I was able to really grow. And what I really respect about Eddie is he kind of threw me in the fire.
Yeah.
From day one, it was like, all right, you're working out these guys. Nick, you got these guys. Brett, you got these guys. Kotie, you have these scouts. Kotie, you got to get out and go on the road and recruit. We need good players. So he really invested in me, and he developed me as a whole. He didn't just say go, as a 22-year-old coach at the time, go recruit.
Right.
He wanted me to develop as a whole. So I was able to grow because I did a lot of things. And we had great success at Asheville. We won a couple Big South championships there. So I was very fortunate that we had good players and that we're able to win. Then I moved on to the College of William and Mary, where I spent 7 years, and I worked for Tony Shaver, who is an incredible basketball mind, and was so good to me.
Yeah.
It was so good to me. Again, it's another place where I was able to take another step as a basketball coach.
Yeah.
And again, another guy that really developed me as a whole. He really developed me, my offensive mind for the game.
Yeah.
He developed me from a player development standpoint. And he allowed me to recruit. And I think another thing that I share with every guy that I've worked for, they value self-starters.
Yeah.
They never told you how they want you to do the job. They want you to get the job done.
Right.
And that was really, really important, I think, for me and my growth. And again, at William Mary, we had a ton of success. Again, I worked with Jonathan Holmes, Ben Wilkins, Austin Shaver, some really good coaches. and we had a lot of success, over the last few years.
Yeah.
And then following William and Mary, I got this opportunity to be at Charlotte and work for Coach Sanchez, who's been terrific in these past 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that's really good for me, and it's just the opportunity. We were an elite offensive team at William and Mary.
Yeah.
I got a chance to work for one of the best offensive minds in the game.
Yeah.
It's just good for me. And now Coach Sanchez, brings a high defensive pedigree. So it's been really good for me. Every day it's like a clinic. Sanchez is terrific. He's a terrific teacher. And again, another opportunity that I'm really, truly grateful for.
Yeah. And so you've been, all across the board, mostly on the East Coast. Along your journey, have there been any obstacles or failures or something that you feel like you've had to fight through, jump over, get around, just like to continue on, because the coaching business is not an easy business to get into or to stay in or to keep going with. So
yeah, it's very demanding, as you know. And I think the landscape, the game has changed. Recruiting has changed. Obviously over the last couple of years, the last year or so, you see the dirt and, the evil that goes on in the recruiting game. And I think sometimes the challenge is, for a guy that prides himself in doing things the right way, sometimes you're put in positions to compromise some of your core beliefs.
Sure.
And I think sometimes that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But I've always believed in, doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Doing it the way I believe in from a recruiting standpoint. Not shortchanging to get a good player. If a player isn't about, if people have their hands out for whatever reason.
Right.
So that's challenging because sometimes doing things the right way isn't always the reward.
Right,
you may not get that guy. So that's always been a challenge.
Yeah.
The demands of the college game. There's so many things to balance. Obviously you have your current players, and developing a relationship with those guys is really important. On top of that, you got to go recruit, and you got to get players, right? Because we all know having good players is the key to winning games.
Yep.
And then just the day to day of maybe you have a scout that you're working on.
Yeah.
The player development piece, the admissions piece, the academic piece that goes nothing to do with basketball, but sometimes I might have to go check a class and demand and meet with guys and make sure they're on the right track academically. So just juggling different tasks just to get the job done.
Right. Okay, so the other day you kind of shared a little bit of a story with me of where, you were at UNC Asheville and you were getting a little bit more opportunity, and tell me about that opportunity.
Yeah, so I'm a Coastal Carolina graduate, and obviously went to school there together, and I spent 4 years there. And my first college job was at UNC Asheville, and I was a 22-year-old, young, fiery assistant coach, and we played down at Coastal. And the guys at Asheville always mess with me because they're like, oh, like your loyalties are with Coastal, you went to Coastal. And the great thing about it is, so on Coastal's team, there was a fifth-year senior by Joseph Harris and a fifth-year senior by Logan Johnson. Well, those two guys were my college roommates in college. So playing against those guys was always, a fun thing. So Coach B, Eddie Beatingbaugh, he gave me the opportunity. He said, hey, we're playing Coastal. He said, you got this scout, all right, the night before practice. He said, tomorrow, I want you to give the pregame speech before that game. I said, oh, man, that's great. I'll get our guys fired up. Thanks. So the game comes, all right, and it's halftime. I get this great rah-rah pregame speech, how bad I want to beat these guys. We're going to win this game. And guys get fired up in the locker room. Break, we go out and we play the game, and we get our tails kicked. We lose by 30. And after the game, I felt so bad. And we get on the bus and we head back to Asheville. And Coach B, he looks at me on the bus and he said, Kotie. I said, yes, Coach. He said, now that is the last pregame speech that you're ever going to give. half jokingly, but half seriously as well.
Right.
But fortunately for us, later that year we played Coastal again in the Big South Championship, and we ended up winning that game at Coastal. But it's safe to say I did not give that pregame speech.
All right. Hey, look, everybody's got to find what they're really, really gifted in, right? Some guys it's X's and O's, some guys it's defense, some guys maybe it's not pregame speeches.
Pregame speeches. Look, never again. That's my last one. At least until I'm a head coach.
You gotta find your niche, man. All right, so along with some of your journey, like you mentioned something to me the other day. That was something that was on your heart. You felt like you kind of wanted to speak a little bit too, which was family life for you and growing up, and just how it wasn't a traditional home, in being a single parent home. And so can you speak to that a little bit, and how that's maybe shaped how you've been pushing for success, or how that shaped you kind of as a man?
Yeah, I would say I was always, I think working hard was something that was always important to me. Again, I come from a two-parent home where I lost my father at an early age, so my mom was, had to raise me. And my mom, either of my parents growing up, mom worked. I mean, she kind of cleaned houses, for a living. Dad worked for a state highway department. So we never had anything. A brother and sister never went to college, never graduated from college. So it was always important to me to work hard, because my parents worked very hard. So they instilled that in me, and to be the first generational, college graduate, which was really important to me.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. You got to continue.
No, but then there's always adversity along the way, right? Again, I lost my father, and when I was 13 years old, and my mom, took a turn for the worse, dealing with some difficult things there. And there was always, Colin, people placed in my life that had an impact, that reached out when I needed it. So I always thought, being able to coach was a way to kind of give back, to kids that are dealing with the same thing. Right. After my father passed, my aunt and uncle took me in and was able to take care of me because of some circumstances, for my mom. So, adversity is something that, we all face. And I wanted to, find a way to be able to give back.
Right. Well, and I think that's so cool, because everybody has a different story, man. Everybody has a different path. And for you to be able to connect with young men that are trying to find their way. I mean, in college, shoot, we're all trying to find our way. Most of us have no idea what's coming next, or we're just trying to get through the next day or the next week. And for you to be able to connect with guys, about some struggles that you went through as a youngster. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you may be recruiting that's a way for you to connect with them, or guys that you have in your system already that you build relationships through that.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really cool. So that kind of leads me into the idea of like, all right, so what's fundamental about who you are on the inside? And so when we, part of this podcast is certainly about basketball and like all of that, but certainly we talk about faith, and everybody also has a different idea about faith, or a different experience with faith. So when I ask that or bring that up, like, what does that make you think, or what road do you go down if we were to start talking about faith?
Well, faith is something that, I've always, valued. That's always been, important to me. Always, if you prioritize things, your faith, your family and friends, and then basketball. But you always want to, like, faith, how can my faith play out in what I do? I think there's not a better opportunity, really. I mean, you got, 14 to 15 guys on the roster, probably in the most pivotal time in their life, in college. Man, there's so many ups, there's so many downs, there's so many highs, there's so many lows, there's so much adversity that's faced. And I think one thing with your faith, one thing I'll go back and say is, it's not always about, it's really more about how you live your life instead of always broadcasting.
Sure.
I think how you treat others is really important.
Absolutely.
How you coach, are you outcome based or are you principle based?
Yeah.
I think those things really matter, and those are the things I think a lot of times your kids see.
For sure, like, and they can see right through all the talk and not living it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think we get a chance to make the greatest impact when our actions lead before our words do. Because sometimes we get in that place where we say it, and then if our actions don't match up, it's hard to build trust. And certainly as a college coach, you play players that you trust,
Absolutely.
and then also players value the coaches that they trust.
Absolutely.
And so to develop that relationship, by having your words match up with your actions is huge.
And to be able to have something that you really can depend on through those tough times.
Yeah.
Like for me, I mean, I lost my mother, I lost my father.
Yeah.
At 29, I'm like, man, I wake up one day and it's like I don't have a a living parent.
Yeah.
But I think the greatest thing is, as far as thankfulness, I think sometimes we talk about this with our guys, just not only being thankful for the good times, the hotels and
right.
Charter flights and the new pair of shoes you have, but also to be thankful for difficult times.
Yeah.
And for me, there's been several difficult times in my life that has really shaped and molded me into who I am today.
Yeah.
And so we talk about it a lot with our guys. We talk about servanthood, as a pillar, and just the way the greatness is to serve others, when it's less about you and more about the group.
Right.
And so it's definitely a big part of what I am and who I am and what we do here, as well as Charlotte.
And so so as you keep pushing forward, as you keep inching forward in your desire to keep working your way up the coaching ladder, and you're trying to do a great job here, and certainly I know you want to keep trying to be the best coach you can be. How does your faith play a part in that? Like, how about when you don't, like, when something doesn't go in your career, like when you don't get a job you were really hoping you were going to get, or something like that?
I'll share a story with you that this past off season I had an opportunity to interview for a head coaching job at UNC Asheville. And UNC Asheville is a place that I have tremendous respect for. I was there 3 years. I absolutely love my time there. I think Janet Cohn and the administration at Asheville does a terrific job. And I felt like I was at, some may say no, but I felt like at 32 years old that I was ready to be a head coach. And I got that opportunity, and I felt like the interview went well, and I felt like I had a really good shot at getting that job. But at the end of the day, it didn't quite work out for me, and it was hard. It was really hard because, again, I love Asheville.
Right.
But I think through that, you got to trust that God is going to plant you, in the right place.
Yeah.
And this being at Charlotte, as a result, I didn't get that. So I got Charlotte. I got an opportunity to work for Coach Sanchez at UNC Charlotte, and this has been a phenomenal place. I really believe I am planted, where I will grow the most at this time.
Right.
And sometimes I think we can question, why this isn't happening or why our path went in a different direction. But there's always a plan.
Right.
There's always a purpose, and you just have to trust, him, through that.
And that's the hardest part, is to trust, because typically we get our plans and we're like, hey, God, how about you hop on board with what I want here?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And he his desire for us to grow and to be refined into the best loving human beings that we can be, it doesn't, we can't see that. We can't see his way. And so to trust that's a massive word and concept.
Hard to do.
Yeah. No, well, I appreciate that. So, all right, you're assistant here, and Coach Sanchez, man, what an awesome leader, right? Just leading with a servant's heart, but in strength. I mean, just really cool. Me being at practice today, really enjoyed seeing that practice and seeing him delegate to you guys and give you guys your opportunities to coach, and then just the way he went about it. But take us through a day in the life of Kotie Kimble. You know, like, are you waking up at 9:30 and going to yoga, or is it a little different than that?
Well, I think the thing about college basketball is the day could really differ. I mean, each day could be different. I think last Wednesday I was on a plane at 6 a.m. flying to D.C. to see a kid, and then going to Baltimore to see another kid, and then coming back the next morning and catching a local kid. But I mean, it could differ each day. Today, I got in the office around 7:30, and our first weightlifting group was going in the weight room, so I poked my head in there to check on those guys, and then I got to my office and I watched practice, from the day before, and then around 9 I had guys, the player development piece. We had a couple guys in the gym shooting. Which is something that we're working really hard on here. And then we had film sessions. So guys, it's the player development piece for us is really important. Obviously as a player on the floor, but developing the mind too. So we had two guys come in today and watch film with me, just to learn some good things, see some good things they did, and also learn from some bad things or some things that we have to correct. And then we have practice. We have practice around 2 o'clock, and pre-practice and post-practice. Sometimes, again, that development piece is really important. So, and then in the evenings, it's usually to go watch it could be go watch a high school practice, go watch a high school game, taking one of our guys to dinner. It could vary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so for you aspiring coaches out there that might be listening, none of that sounded like just sitting around and just doing a couple hours of basketball. Earlier Kotie talked a little bit about the grind of being a college basketball coach, and it certainly is. But when you love it, then it makes it a little bit easier, huh? All right, so I'm going to turn it to you, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask me a question.
So, Colin, I would say this. Obviously, us being together at Coastal, you have an incredible story. I think you were a walk-on, started as a walk-on who ended up, earning a scholarship and ended up being a terrific player for us at Coastal, and a starter, for a team that was 5 seconds away from going to the NCAA tournament. But there had to be some dark moments, along the way, some really challenging, hard moments to you. Can you talk to us about that and some of the things you did to stay with it and keep getting better and becoming the player that you were?
Well, when you say that, it makes me think about my senior year, when Coach Peterson came in. Coach Strickland gave me the walk-on opportunity, of which I'm forever grateful, because nobody else was giving me a shot. He gave me a shot, and it turned out that I could help the team, and I earned a scholarship. But Coach Strickland moved on after I was there for 3 years. So my senior year, Coach Buzz Peterson came in, and I was a senior who thought I would just get all of the minutes and all of the reps and all of everything. And man, the first part of that, I was so concerned on impressing Coach Peterson, Coach Conroy, that coaching staff that came in, that I was just not very good, like the first half of that season, and it got to the point where they started a freshman, Marius the senior, they started him over me, and they should have, me looking back on it, but in the moment I'm like, what in the world? I know I'm better than this dude, what have you, and Mario turned out to be a good player, but it was something for me where I was too concerned about impressing Coach, that I didn't just get locked into hooping, and so the toughest part for me was when they benched me and they started him, and I was playing, 5 minutes a game as a senior who had fought through a whole bunch of stuff just to get there, and I remember calling my dad and being like, Dad, what? Come on, man. My dad played in the NFL and he had ups and downs, and I'm like, how'd you just keep showing up to practice? Because we were bad. Yeah. At the beginning of that season, we were bad, man. We were losing the team. We were losing the teams by a lot of points.
We were.
I mean, and I remember Coach Peterson, we were at Wisconsin, we got drilled, and he's like, man, this ain't even fun.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing fun about this, you know? And so I called my dad, I was like, how did you do it? Like, I don't even want to go to practice. We're losing, and we suck, and I'm not playing, like, and he's just like, you just keep going. Like, that's all you do. You just keep going. It's not what I wanted to hear, but it was wisdom from a man who had been there. And so getting through that and then coming out on the other side and earning my starting spot back and us going on a 12 or 13 game win streak, whatever it was, that was pretty important to me to show the fight that I had it in me to come out on the other side of that. So you were definitely there, in those days, and I know you remember a lot of that. But the dark moments, I think, actually, like you were talking about before about adversity, like they actually show us like kind of what we're made of and how bad we might want something. And so we're gonna we'll wrap it up and we'll point it back to the audience and say, what are the things that you have struggled with? What adversity have you come across? What dark moments have you had? And the other question is, have you trusted God? Have you desired to trust God in those moments? It's really hard in those moments when we think that everything's going the wrong way, but to actually try to trust God in those moments, that He's actually using those things to grow you and make you better. So audience, you could certainly send anything our way if you have any answers to that. But Kotie, how can they follow you? Are you on social media?
Yeah.
If people want to connect with you,
Twitter,
how can they get
Twitter.
to you?
I'm on all. I have Twitter at Kotie Kimble, Twitter, Facebook, Kotie Kimble, Snapchat, Kimble WM Hoops, because I can't change my Snap name. Right. But all those are great. And I'll say one thing about just if I could do things differently, if I had advice for younger coaches, I would say, one thing is just always be yourself. I think I really struggled with that early in my career. Yeah. I had so many guys that I really respected, like Buzz Peterson, like Michael Boynton, who I work with, Ed Conroy, that I always tried to be someone else. Yeah. I was always by coach's side in practice. I think sometimes I tried to limp like him, and you know what I mean? Or I see Mike, how he relates to you guys. Yeah. Mike Boynton, who's now the head coach at Oklahoma State. It's like, man, I want to do it that way.
Right.
But no, the older I got, the more I realize is that the best version of myself is good enough.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important to really be yourself. Secondly, I would say read. Like, just read more. Yeah. When I was younger, I wish I would have read more than just coaching books. Right. I think you got to really challenge yourself, and how can you, because there's so many other parts to being a successful coach. Yeah. Like, how can you be a better leader? Like, read some books on leadership. Right. Read some books on communicating more effectively. Yeah. I went out to California a couple years ago, and I spent some time with Coach Conzo Martin. He just shared with me the value of learning how to communicate. Yeah. So I started to read more on communication. Yeah. And the last thing I would say is read more and listen to people's stories. Yeah. Because you can gain so much inspiration through others. Yeah. Everyone has a story. No doubt. And they're all different. Right. But I think you can learn a lot, from other people's story. Yeah.
I dig it. Kotie, I appreciate you coming on, my man.
No, my man. And, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Follow UNC Charlotte men's basketball this year, and stay up with Kotie Kimble if you want to follow, see what he's up to. F2 Podcast, we out.